all of your credentials over there.
It's a weird feeling sound to me.
Yeah.
All right.
John, it's always great to see you. Thanks so
Laura.
much.
Appreciate it.
And joining us now to analyze all of this is civil rights attorney Harmeet Dhillon from San Francisco, along with Juan Williams, the co-host of The Five. All right, Juan. Hit me with your, I shouldn't say hit me because that'll come out the wrong way, but you know what I'm saying. I can't say anything anymore without offending someone.
I would agree. But no, I thought you actually hit the right point, which is from the perspective of the women, there's no indication here, no matter, despite what Lisa Bloom may have been up to, that they were in fact fabricating accounts. Their integrity is not in question here. What's in question is whether or not Lisa Bloom, as a lawyer, was really overstepping bounds in terms of either doing business with donors or potentially willing to take money from tabloids in exchange for the stories coming from the women. But in terms of the charges the women were levying against Donald Trump, there's no indication here that they were making things up, Laura.
Harmeet, your reaction to this? I mean, we're $750,000 offered. They were in touch with donors to Hillary Clinton, who after that canceled press conference and before they were being offered money as well, right before the election. Your reaction to this?
Yeah, well, I mean, in the real world, I think what Juan said was nice in fantasy land, but in the real world, people actually do change their stories in exchange for $750,000 or their mortgage paid off or their kids' college paid for. You know, what disgusts me as a plaintiff's lawyer is that people do have real things that happen to them. And when this type of situation happens with an unethical, unscrupulous, and frankly, law-breaking lawyer like Lisa Bloom, what you have is a situation where people then begin to doubt the stories of legitimate victims of sexual harassment and other discrimination. And that kind of disgusts me. And, you know, it's by the way, has anyone asked the question if Lisa Bloom says, oh, well, donors were calling me and approaching me? I mean, how does that work? How does that work? How do the donors know to call Lisa Bloom or Gloria Allred, her mother, any of these types of far-left feminist lawyers, self-proclaimed feminist lawyers, unless it's put out there by somebody that these women are willing to source victims to come forward and tell their story? And I have to credit Lisa Bloom for her creativity here. Getting some donor to make a illegal campaign contribution, really a donation in kind to the Hillary Clinton campaign, and then herself personally profiting from that. I mean, that's a coup if she pulled it off.
Yeah, that's a pretty good system. I want to go back to John.
If you can get it. I mean,
I want to go back to John Solomon for a moment. John, any progress on the reporting on the donors, who they were, how much they were offering? It sounds like something Steyer would be up to, if you ask me.
We're calling lots of people and just doing the old-fashioned gumshoe work, trying to find those donors and what motivated them to make that check. Because the motivation can fall under federal election law if, in fact, they were trying to influence the election with this money.
Yeah, Juan, the question of whether there are campaign finance reform violations, campaign finance law violations, is an interesting one, because if your goal is to influence the outcome of an election, as John wrote tonight in his original article, it seems like that was the goal, because she was flying all over the country trying to get this woman to show up at this press conference and said it's really important that you tell your story, and obviously it didn't happen with that last woman. But that seems like it's certainly an effort to influence the outcome of an election. If you're offering money, as Harmeet said, that's an in-kind donation to a campaign effort. You could, without a doubt, be at least raising questions about campaign finance here if you're talking about $750,000.
Well, you could raise questions, but I still don't see that there was a crime. I don't approve of Lisa Bloom's behavior, because it looks to me, as was pointed out, that it then opens questions about the credibility of the women's testimony. But as John said, there's no indication that the woman made anything up. Harmeet says, I'm in a fantasy land because I think that with all that money on the table, people wouldn't make things up. Well, where's the evidence that anything was fabricated,
Juan, you don't
that
think
everything
it's
was
odd?
made up?
Juan,
but let me speak to your point, Laura. Your point was interesting to me, but I still don't see a crime, because remember, back then in the heat of that campaign, everybody knew about women coming out, and if these donors wanted to protect the women, I don't see that that's illegal or an in-kind contribution.
Well, paying someone's mortgage off, paying a kid's tuition,
I don't know
was
what
also
the
dangled out
negotiation.
there.
You know, this is tawdry.
How is that protecting? How is that protecting? I mean, who doesn't want their mortgage paid off? It doesn't. I mean, that's like that's a convenient deal. But
I think Lisa Bloom is the one who's conducting these awful negotiations, but that's not about the women, is it?
Now, my question to you, Juan, though, you said it doesn't call into question the veracity of any of the allegations. I actually take issue with that. I think the Hearth gal, Can you say gal? You probably can't say that either. But Jill Harth, a makeup artist.
Yeah.
If someone had done what she claims that Donald Trump did, the grope, why would you want to like rush to the campaign? There's no other work she can get. There's nothing else she can do in New York City. No stage work she could do. There's no commercial work she could do. She rushes to the Trump campaign. Let me work for you. I'll be a surrogate. I'll say good things about you. So I would put her on the stand and say, wait a second. You made allegations against him in 1997. Now you say he's good for women? Like, when are we supposed to believe you? In 1997? Or do we believe you now, Jill? I mean, it would take about 5 questions for me to destroy her credibility on this. I'm sorry. You guys are being way too charitable.
But that's not all the women. That's one woman.
Well, that's the one I'm focusing on right now.
Okay,
Because
but
she's
that's
going
not the
desperate to work for the
majority. That's not,
campaign.
you know.
I'm
that's
using my
one
best
woman.
example one right now. But Harmeet, you can
win.
close it out. Harmeet, go ahead.
Yeah, so Laura, when people come to you as a plaintiff's lawyer about their story, you know, these are vulnerable people, and I think that Lisa Bloom has really exploited some of these women. And so, you know, she goes to fly and talk to somebody in their hospital, and then after the person doesn't comply, she does this emotional manipulation thing saying, I've been very good to you, you've been very bad to me, et cetera. And she repeatedly stresses how close it is to the election. So if anybody thinks that the timing of all of this and the escalating money wasn't related to the election, well, I have a bridge to sell you.
Oh, guys, great conversation. And John Solomon, phenomenal report tonight. Really interesting. And by the way, guys, the Boston Globe that famously exposed the sex abuse in the Catholic Church as a serious public